George R.R. Martin, my favorite dude, one of my heroes. I like to think of myself as the George R.R. Martin of tweeting, except that my tweets never go anywhere, and he's one of the most successful authors in history, maybe, probably. He actually has a really interesting backstory. I didn't realize how much TV writing he's done in his career. So he's a big writer's strike guy, and he's supporting. Let me just turn this down a little bit. Sorry, it's my brain stops working when lights get overwhelming. Ugh. So he tweeted that he wants to say a few words about what's the most important issue. Yes, we are showing it. Good. And oh no, I'm not clicking on it. I already loaded it, you idiot. And I'm at the bottom. So here's his blog, georgerrmartin.com/notablog. Clever. He wrote a thing called Writers on Set. And I thought I'd probably just read the entire thing. Even though I don't think that's great, like video producing, but fuck it. This is a podcast. I get to do what I want. May 8th, 2023. Interesting image here to start with, like a typewriter that has an angry face. Really glad I figured out that was a typewriter, because yeah, otherwise I would have seemed really dumb. So here's what he says. He says, I want to say a few words about what I think is the most important issue in the current writer's strike, the so-called mini rooms that the Guild is hoping to abolish, and the terrible impact they are having on writers at the start of their careers. By the way, I had teased the picket line video that Hasanabi and Adam Conover, the live stream they did the first day of the picket. Maybe it might have been the second one. And I'm still going to do something about that. So just hang with me. I got to get into Premiere and do a bunch of editing for it first. So it didn't work out this time. Back to George R.R. Martin. A look at my own career may be instructive. For the first 14 years of my career, I wrote only prose, a few novels, and lots of stories for Analog, Asimov's, and various other SF magazines. I mean science fiction, and anthologies. Much as I enjoyed television, I never dreamt of writing for it until 1985, when CBS decided to launch a new version of The Twilight Zone, and executive producer Phil DeGuer invited me to write an episode for them. A freelance script, that was how you began back then. I decided to give it a shot, and Phil and his team liked what I did, so much so that within days of delivery, I got an offer to come on staff. Before I quite knew what had happened, I was on my way to LA with a 6-week deal as a staff writer at the Guild minimum salary. Scripts against. What am I misunderstanding there? I was on my way to LA with a 6-week deal as a staff writer at the Guild minimum salary. Scripts against. So that must be some Hollywood jargon. I live in LA, and I'd love to be a scriptwriter, screenwriter guy. I've written a few scripts, but I would never expect that to happen at this point in my life. Are you kidding me? No, hold on. I got to fix the thing. Parentheses. In the 80s, staff writers was the lowest rung on the ladder. You could tell because it was the only job with writer in the title. Okay. I don't quite follow that logic. Not that I think his logic is wrong. I'm just, I get it because there's other words. So next paragraph, he has a Twilight Zone logo from the 80s Twilight Zone, by the way, not the Rod Serling one we all know and love. He writes, what I knew about television production when I got off that plane at Burbank was, well, so minimal, I can't think of a pithy analogy. But I learned. I learned in the writer's room from Phil himself and the amazing staff he had assembled for TZ. Jim Crocker, Rockne S. O'Bannon, the incredible Alan Brannert, Michael Cassutt, and a bevy of fantastic freelancers. And not just about dialogue and structure and the language of script writing, I learned about production as well. Production is bold and italicized, which is how you know something's really important. The moment I arrived, Phil threw me into the deep end. I wrote 5 scripts during my season and a half on TZ, and I was deeply involved in every aspect of every one of them. I did not just write my script, turn it in, and go away. I sat in on the casting sessions. I worked with the directors. I was present at the table reads. The Last Defender of Camelot was the first of my scripts to go into production, and I was on set every day. I watched the stuntmen rehearse the climactic sword fight, parentheses, in the lobby of the St. Elsewhere set, as it turned out. And I was present when they shot that scene, and someone zigged when he should have zagged, and a stuntman's nose was cut off. Whoa. A visceral lesson as to the kind of thing that can go wrong. With Phil and Jim and Harvey Frand, our line producer, another great guy who taught me a lot, I watched dailies every day. After the episode was in the can, I sat in on some post-production and watched the editors work their magic. I learned from them too. Okay? I want people to pay me to teach them video editing, by the way. Leave a comment. Maybe we'll work something out. It'll be expensive, like a piano teacher, but way cooler. Next paragraph. There is no film school in the world that could have taught me as much about television production as I learned on Twilight Zone during that season and a half. When TZ was renewed for a second season, I was promoted from staff writer to story editor. More money, and now scripts were plus and not against. Okay, so there's some way that the scripts add or take away, I suppose. Started sitting in on freelance pitches, and now I was allowed to talk and give notes. Sadly, the show was canceled halfway through the second season, but by that time I had learned so much that I was able to go on to further work in television. I did a couple stories for Max Headroom, but my next staff job was Beauty and the Beast. They brought me on as executive story editor, one bump up from my TZ rank. Over the next 3 years, I climbed the ladder, rung by rung. Co-producer, producer, co-supervising producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer. When B&B finished its run, I started writing features and pitching pilots. Landed an overall deal at Columbia, created and scripted Starport and The Survivors and Fade Out and Doorways. Wow. Which we filmed for ABC. I was showrunner. What? Along with Jim Crocker and executive producer of that one. I didn't know any of this about George R. R. Martin. That was my first 10 years in television, 1985 to 1995, more or less, long before HBO and Game of Thrones. None of it would have been possible if not for the things I learned on Twilight Zone as a staff writer and story editor. I was the most junior of junior writers, maybe a hot-ish young writer in the world of SF, but in TV, I was so green that I would have been invisible against a green screen. Love it. And that, in my opinion, is the most important of the things that the Guild is fighting for. The right to have that kind of career path, to enable new writers, young writers, and yes, prose writers to climb the same ladder. Right now, they can't. Streamers and shortened seasons have blown the ladder to splinters. The way it works now, a show gets put in development, the showrunner assembles a mini room made up of a couple of senior writers and a couple newcomers. They meet for a month or two, beat out the season, break down the episodes, go off and write scripts, reassemble, get notes, give notes, rewrite, rinse, and repeat, and finally turn into the scripts. Maybe he meant turn in the scripts, but that also, okay, I don't know. Sorry. It's George R. R. Martin. I should not question. And show is greenlit, parentheses, or not. Some shows never get past the room, end parentheses, and sent into production. The showrunner and his second, maybe his second and his third, take it from there. The writer-producers, the ones who already know all the things that I learned on Twilight Zone. Oh, I see. So like the top ones, the writer-producers, the guys that with all the more experience and stuff. Okay. The junior writers, they're not there. Once they delivered their scripts and did a revision or two, a revision of two, he writes, but I think he meant or two, they were paid, sent home, their salary ended. They are off looking for another gig. If the series gets another season, maybe they will be brought back. Maybe they won't. Maybe they can't, since they are off in another mini room for another show. If they do get brought back, they may get a promotion, but that's not guaranteed. I know writers who have been staff writer on half a dozen different series and others who have been writer's room assistant, which is the new entry-level gig. No, sorry, parentheses here, which is the new entry-level gig. Let me back up a sentence. I know writers who have been staff writer on half a dozen series and others who have been, quote unquote, writer's room assistant, parentheses, which is the new entry-level gig since no one buys freelance scripts anymore, end parentheses. 3 or 4 times, never getting off the bottom rung of the ladder, no matter, he writes, but no matter how talented they are. And when a junior writer does finally get a better title, even one that will put a P word on their IMDb credits, they still won't have any producing experience. In many cases, they won't be asked to set even when... Oh, asked to set. Oh, sorry. I thought set was a verb there. Set's a noun. He means the set where they film it. In many cases, they won't be asked to set even when the episodes they wrote are being filmed. They may be allowed on set if the showrunner and execs this is in parentheses, or if the showrunner and execs are cool with that, but only as a visitor with no authority, no role, and no pay, of course. They may even be told they're not allowed to speak to the actors. That's got to be really weird to be the writer and to go see it filmed. I imagine it's wonderful when it's like really cool and it's like, the collaboration is healthy and stuff, and everybody's being compensated, and it's a good project. But to go there and be like just like relegated to just the sidelines, if you're lucky, and like you'd be causing problems if you tried to like talk to people and you wrote the thing. That's super. I mean, it's a very collaborative industry. I'm sorry to go off the rails here, but yeah, that's intense. One of the things, next paragraph, the AMPTP, that's the Academy of Motion Picture and Theatrical Producers. That represents all like the streaming companies and the studios and stuff, and also the law firm. One of the law firms, at least, I don't know all their law firms, that that the Young Turks hired when they had their union busting going on, because there was 2 NLRB cases back then. It's on the NLRB website. Just how I know this is one of the same is Mitchell, Silverberg, and Knupp, which is on this website proudly brags about their role in defending the AMPTP. So the Young Turks hires the same law firm that is on the side of the producers. That's crazy. I worked at the Young Turks. Everybody is new and doesn't know about that. Lots more to say about that. That's nuts. But anyway, okay. One of the things the AMPTP put forward in their last offer to the WGA is that some writers might be brought onto sets as unpaid interns to shadow and observe. Those are in quotes. Even that will not be an absolute right. Maybe they will be let in, maybe not. These are the people who wrote the stories being filmed, who created the characters, who wrote the words the actors are saying. I was way more than that in 1985, and so was every other staff writer in television at the time. The juniors may have worked for as long as half a year on the show, all of it in a room with other writers, but they won't be part of the casting. They won't be meeting with the director. They won't be at the table read. No one will bring them into the editing suite so the editor can explain what he's doing. The line producer will not sit down and go over the budget with them, parentheses, as Harvey Frand did with me, or patiently explain why they can't have 9 matte paintings or that huge montage. Like, wouldn't you be a better writer going as you gain all this experience? Not to ask for 9 matte paintings? Understanding production and editing would be a huge boon to the overall quality and the ease and the efficiency of the profit extraction, because they'd make better decisions. Sorry, that's my own interjection there. They won't be sharing lunch with the stars. If a stuntman's nose is cut off, they will need to read about it. Variety. I think it means in Variety. Since they will be off in another room on another show. Many rooms are abominations, and the refusal of the AMPTP to pay writers to stay with their shows through production as part of the job for which they need to be paid, not as a tourist. It is not only wrong, it is incredibly short-sighted. If the story editors of 2023 are not allowed to get any production experience, where do the studios think the showrunners of 2033 are going to come from? If nothing else, the WGA needs to win on that issue, no matter how long it may take. And then we have an animated GIF, or is this like an old-timey website thingy? It's like an alien that looks angry. It says current mood, determined, with an alien face that I guess it's red eyes make, I guess, yeah, anger and determination often are similar facial expression. Take it from me, I have done animation. Well, I love that he doesn't edit much because there's like typos and stuff in there. So it's like I get so precious whenever I write something and I try to make it perfect. I still fuck up. So why not just like bang it out once, maybe read it once? But why? Yeah, I'm just going to start doing what George R.R. Martin does. I imagine this just flows out of his hands. All great points, man. You know, it's like the whole writers strike is not just about the pay that they're not getting because of the streaming model, but also the use of AI as it goes forward, which actually is something interesting. And I bookmarked a bunch of AI articles, and I'm going to watch some more stuff because I want to kind of dig into that a little more. Obviously, I have some formed opinions already, but we're going to get back to that topic for sure, so I'm not going to go on about it. But the more they can just eliminate the humans and this kind of career development that George R.R. Martin just explained to us, the more they think they can maximize profits and make more money and not have to be encumbered by the humanity of the people who actually produce it. All these rich pieces of shit, these bosses, the Zaslavs, that's the guy, the Netflix guy, who got like 200 million in bonus or stock options and 50 million in pay. You know, $250 million for a year of work, and then they're pleading poverty as far as to whether they can afford to pay the literal source of the primary nutrient. Like none of these shows could be made without all the jobs being done. Like the writers are I think arguably the most important, but you take away one of the roles and the show doesn't get made. You need all the physical work, you need all the post, the pre, the post, the production, blah, blah, blah. But the writer is the soul part of that process. That's the soul of it, along with like a showrunner who knows how to like integrate it all into the entire difficult, complex, collaborative thing. The writer is the heart. The writer is where the emotion and the humanity starts, right? And that's also what drives the industry, like why people flock, why we all look for this kind of stuff to escape from our shitty worlds and our own lives. And they just want to erase all that. They just want to get rid of that. And then they're going to try to get rid of editing through AI. They're going to get rid of actors through AI. I bookmarked a really interesting Twitter thread that somebody had written. They think that because it all happens on computers and it all ends up in electricity, that all you need to do is just reorganize how you conduct the electricity. That's essentially what this whole AI business is all about. It's fucking sick, man. Just because they've got the legal mandate to maximize shareholder value, and that there's weird psychotic demons. They're venture capitalists and Wall Street firms that are buying into these things, that expect gigantic returns, and that they expect their payments, and so the whole core of this whole thing is being ruined by people who don't need money, that just want more money, and it's disgusting. So shout out to George Martin. Hat tip to my boy. That's how he dresses. That's the hat he wears. That's his Twitter profile. He's got this funny smile. He does wear that hat.